Hey guys, NFX here. Today I want to talk about my vocal chain. And actually, a bit about the process I use for mixing vocals. Now, I'm not going to tell you I'm the best at it, but what I am going to tell you is I'm the best I've ever been at it. Uh, and in the past year, I've kind of developed some techniques because I've been doing vocals more. Prior to last year, I didn't really do a lot with vocals, um, just because, quite honestly, AI vocals have opened a door for me that I really don't think was there before. And I don't want to go into it in terms of, you know, talking about AI specifically in this video. I have a couple other videos where I talk about it if you want to go watch those. But because I have access to the vocals more than ever, um, I've had to kind of come up with my own techniques. Now, I'm not going to tell you these are pro techniques. I'm not going to tell you these techniques will change the way, will improve your mixes or anything like that. What I will tell you is these are what work for me. These are what have given me the best results so far. And I just want to share that with you so that potentially you could learn or get ideas from it. That's really that's really it. So, that being said, one thing that's super important when I'm doing tracks these days with vocals is setting up buses in the mixer. A bus is basically where you take several other mixer channels and you group them together into one. So, for example, I have a drum mix here, and the drum mix is routed to the master. But if we go to my individual drums, like here I have a kick, you can see that it is not routed to the master, it's routed into the drum mix channel. My snare, same thing, hat, same thing, cymbals, same thing. So essentially, my kick, snare, hat, and cymbals are all going to the drum mix bus. Okay? A bus is a collection of other mixers routed to it, or other mixer channels routed to it. Okay, so the way I generally work is I have a drum mix and I have an instrument mix. The instrument mix, well, it basically takes all the other instruments. So my bass is routed not to the master, but to the instrument mix. Guitar, a flex there, which is an organ, all routed into the instrument mix. And then I have a vocal channel. And the vocal channel is routed directly to the master and it's side chained into the instrument mix. Um, I don't want to talk about the side chain portion of it just yet. Maybe I'll do that in another short video. It's not really that complicated, but it is. I think it is interesting. Um, you know what? Maybe I'll talk about it in this video just to be complete, so the whole vocal thing is talked about. Actually, I've changed my own mind. But what that essentially means is if I was to mute just these three channels and hit play, you wouldn't hear anything because these are the only three channels going to the master. So I could put on my drums, my instruments, and my vocals. Ghettos rise, seen the ghettos fall, living by the code, dodging death, standing tall. Okay, so it's on one level you might go, that's too complicated, and I know some of you probably do way more complex routing. Okay, but for the general person, they might go, oh, why do you go through all that trouble? And the reason is you're going to get better mixes this way anyway. It really lets you control. Once you've got your drum mix, all your drum levels figured out, you can just control them all in one fader. Same with your instrument mix. So it helps. It also helps when you're using vocals and a plugin I use called Track Spacer, which I'll talk about, but not yet. So we go to my vocals. The vocals are routed here into channel 1. Now this only has one vocal track, so there's only one vocal channel. Sometimes I'll have a few vocal channels, simply because I might want to double up on a chorus part or add ad-libs or something else is going on vocally. But in this case, just to keep things simple, they're all in one channel. It's one vocal in one channel. The effects you could see that I use Loud Max, which is just a basic loudness maximizer type plugin. And I use that, at a kind of a little bit of a setting there just to help even out the loudness of the vocal, so it's not too soft or too loud, or the fluctuation between the two, loudness and softness, isn't too great. It kind of keeps things level. I use a plugin here. I've been using this called Trap Tune, and this plugin came as part of the FL Cloud subscription. I'm not sure which level of the subscription it's in, but I found there's a feature in here that I really like, and that is the second voice feature. If I generally turn off the tune, it's got an auto tuner up above, but I don't use that. It's got, on this level, it's got the second voice, which is turned on. It's got a distortion, a reverb, and a delay. I sometimes use the reverb. In this case, I am using the reverb. And then I generally don't touch those yellow settings there. But if I wasn't using the reverb here, I might additionally have in slot 4 down here a reverb at the end of the chain. But in this case, because TrapTune's doing the reverb for me, I'm not doing that. And then finally, at the end of this chain, I have a parametric EQ. And this is kind of one of the things I wanted to point out. While you do see me taking out some of the low end here in the built-in equalizer, if we go into the parametric EQ here, I'm taking off low end here, and I'm also taking off a little bit of high end there. And then I'm ducking a few frequencies in the middle here. Now, the reason why I'm doing that is because I've listened to the isolated vocal and determined that these had some frequencies that didn't sound that great. So by lowering them, I've cut them out. Now, I know these aren't in order. I don't necessarily use these in order. I just grab one and start listening. And the way I listen is similar to a video I did probably a decade ago about how to find the sweet spot in a sound. And when you find the sweet spot in a sound, you can also find a sour spot in a sound using the same technique. So let me just kind of explain what that is. So let's say, for example, I've got this level here on number 3. What I'll do is I'll play the vocal, and let me isolate the vocal and just put it on a spot where it's going to play. And then I'm going to take this, let's assume this was not set, but what I would do is I would increase it, and I'll move it over to the side a bit and widen it up a little bit. And I'm going to play the vocal. Now what's going to happen is I'm going to be sliding this back and forth, just kind of listening. And when I hear something that sounds really harsh on my ear, I'll stop there, and then I will cut there by moving it down and then thinning it out a little bit like that. Okay, so I just want you to hear, when I get about to right here, there's probably going to be some sound that to my ear isn't going to sound good. Maybe it'll come through the video, but let me start and then I'll sweep it over just to give you an idea.
I was raised where the sun haze and the gun sprays, living in LA's maze. Crip blue on the crew, but the blood stays. Bodies drop and the blood weighs. Corner posted like homies never days. Pipe in the waistband, clips loaded. I playing in the land, the low Vatos rolling. Chicano blocks got 'em exploding. Pyro with blue.
Okay, so somewhere in this range, there's like this almost windy sounding vocal. I know I'm exaggerating it by bringing it all the way up, right? Like if it was down here, you might not even hear it that much. But what I want to do is find that.
I was raised where the sun haze and the gun sprays, living in LA's maze. Crip blue on the crew, but the blood stays. Bodies drop and the blood weighs. Corner.
When I find it, I'll then drop it down just a bit, and then I'll tighten it up. And that's really all I do. Here on number 6, let me just listen. If I exaggerate that, maybe this one will be a little bit easier for you to hear.
I was raised where the sun haze and the gun sprays, living in LA's maze. Crip blue on.
I wish I could isolate that. I'm sure there's some way I could have isolated just that frequency, but it doesn't sound good in my ear.
I was raised where the sun haze and the gun sprays, living in LA's maze. Crip blue on the crew, but the blood stays. Bodies drop and the blood weighs.
And by reducing it in these 3 spots, I feel like I've created a cleaner sounding vocal. So that's why you see these little harsh dips going on in here. Now I also generally take out the low end so that it makes room for more of the instruments that need the low end. And I usually take out a little bit of the high end as well. Because generally vocals aren't going to be way up this high. If I was to turn this off,
I was raised where the.
You'll see that there is activity up here, right? It's definitely activity up here. But watch when I lower it. You're not going to hear much of a difference.
I was raised where the sun haze and the gun sprays, living in LA's maze. Crip blue on the crew, but the blood stays. Bodies drop and the blood weighs. Corner posted like.
So since I can do that and it doesn't affect the vocal, I take it out. I just take it out because I figure if it's not there, it won't be there to clash with anything else moving forward. And that's why I do it. It's just to try to, again, keep as clean of a vocal as I can. Now this number 5 here, you can see it's actually boosting a little bit in that range. That I can only do when I listen to the full mix. Okay, so let me turn everything back on, and then here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit play, and then I'm going to lift this up and move it. Actually, you know what? Maybe I'll just keep it out of the way, and then once I hit play, I'll bring it into play. I'll sweep for the sweet spot, and in this case, I'm not looking for a sour spot. It's definitely I'm looking for the spot where the vocals seem to just come out crisper, cleaner, more easy to understand. I think you'll hear this one much easier, but just listen.
I was raised where the sun haze and the gun sprays, living in LA's maze. Crip blue on the crew, but the blood stays. Bodies drop and the blood weighs.
So hopefully you could hear the vocals really sound crispy right here. But I don't want to leave it up that high, right? I just want a little bit of a booster there. So I generally boost it a little bit, but not too much. So that's my thinking when it comes to how to EQ vocals. And that's really it for the vocal channel. However, a very important part of my process with vocals does involve having an instrument mix bus that uses track spacer. Okay, and the reason is, first of all, vocals have been sidechained to the instrument mix. So if you right click there, you would do sidechain to this track, right? And the little knob here is at completely down to 0. You don't want any of the actual vocal audio sounds coming out of the instrument mix. What this does is it sends the data over there for the plugin to use, but it doesn't actually mix in the audio to the instrument bus. Okay, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this down. Now this has been routed into it using the sidechain here on the processing tab. You can see it says 1 is the sidechain. 1 happens to be vocals. If you Right click here, you can select vocals. But I'm going to turn the amount of it to 0 while I explain what is it doing, okay? And basically what Track Spacer does, when I hit play, what you're going to see is on the top half of this line, you're going to see kind of an EQ profile of the vocal.
I was raised where the sun haze and the gun sprays, living in LA's maze.
Okay? Now, as I add this effect, you'll see below the line will be kind of like an anti-EQ. I call it a complementary EQ because essentially it's going to reduce some of the frequencies that you would see up here coming from the vocal. It reduces those frequencies from the instrument mix. Now, if you think about it for a minute, why is that important? It's because it's essentially carving out space that the vocals use in their frequencies, carving that out of the instrument mix so that the vocals can sound cleaner and clearer through the instruments. And just to give you a demonstration, I'll put this at 0. And when I hit play, I'll start to increase this. And you'll hear the more of the effect I put on there, going all the way up to 100%, the more the vocals kind of take over the mix. Right? So just listen.
I was raised where the sun haze and the gun sprays, living in LA's maze. Crip blue on the crew, but the blood stays. Bodies drop in the blood ways. Corner posted like homies.
Now, if we turn off the drums and I hit play, essentially the instrumentation's gone when this is at 100%.
I was raised where the sun haze and the gun sprays, living in LA's maze. Crip.
But we don't want it at 100%, obviously. I found that this works best between 15 and 20%, so I'm going to put it, let's just say I'll put it at 19%. But now you understand what it's doing, right? And then by doing this, I'm cutting the instrument frequencies by, let's say, 20%, which gives the vocals that extra space in the mix.
I was raised where the sun haze and the gun sprays, living in LA's maze. Crip blue.
Now I can add the drums back in. The drums I don't route through any track spacer. Simply that's just my choice. I like the drums to sound very unaffected by things. Like I try to pick the right drum sounds and get the right drum mix. And then I'm less concerned with the drums messing with the vocals than I am with the whole other instrumentation. Specifically with things like a guitar. For example, if I was to play you the guitar, let's go here in my mix. If I was to play from where the guitar here is playing, and let me leave it here at 19%, you're not going to hear that guitar that much. Actually, let me play it without the vocal. And you will hear the guitar because the vocal's not cutting out the frequencies because it's off, right? So just listen to the guitar line. Right? You can hear it. It's in the mix. Now, when I put the vocal back on, you'll hear the vocal much better than you'll hear that guitar line.
Ghettos rise, seen the ghettos fall. Living by the code, dodging death, standing tall. Bullets fly, homies die, but I won't fall. Navigating LA streets, I'ma conquer it all.
See, so that's the power of Track Spacer, right? And that's why I use it. Now, I know there's other plugins that do this. I don't use those, but I know that it's not a unique thing. But I do know that Track Spacer is simple and it's relatively inexpensive. So that worked for me. So I guess that's it. You know, that's kind of the process I use with respect to vocals in the mix. Hopefully I'll have some other tips for you somewhere down the line. And I hope that you've learned something or maybe got an idea or whatever. I just hope this video was helpful to you. If you did like the video, please put the like in the video just to let me know that. If there's anything you guys want to comment about with respect to this video, or if you have an idea for a video you'd like to see me do, please, please, please leave me a comment. Even if you're just telling me how great I am, I love those comments too. But at the end of the day, I'm just trying to make something that's helpful for people. This is the way I do things. I'm not telling you this is the best way. I'm not telling you, I'm not making promises to you, okay? But the only promise I can tell you is that this is how I do it and how I have found good results, and I hope you will too. And with all that said, I hope you guys have a good one.